I'm Van Sebastian, here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins, bringing you this week's Written on the Edge Season 11, Episode 2 interview. We are joined by Daniel Land to discuss his upcoming LP, Pearl Daddy. So let's get to know our guest. Daniel Land has become both a scholar and practitioner of the kind of music he creates, studying towards a PhD on artists like the Cocteau Twins and Slowdive at the London College of Music, whilst collaborating with artists as varied as Darkher, Swoone, and the electronica auteur Ulrich Schnauss. Meanwhile, Daniel's music has found a wider audience by gracing campaigns by brands such as Expedia and appearing in films including Only You and The Art of My Scars. He is currently working on the third draft of a memoir covering the period from 97 to 2000, focusing on his late teens in rural Devon, UK, and the experience of coming out in the shadow of Section 28. It explores how homophobia shaped his early relationships, the depressive fallout that followed, and the activism that emerged from his recovery, working with a charity to support isolated queer young people, campaigning for legislative change, contributing to police diversity strategies, and helping to develop national guidelines for schools on tackling homophobic bullying. Daniel, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me and Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year to you too. Woohoo! So, for folks who didn't hear your first interview with us, and I highly recommend they go listen to it, what started you on your creative path? Just a quick introduction into why you're
Why you
in
do
the
what you
creative
do
world.
do.
Yeah, instead of, accounting or maths or something.
I think last time I made some kind of joke, didn't I? Which
Yeah.
came first, the music or the depression? Um, the I was always just a bit of a show off. I think when I was a kid, I think I needed attention or something. So I was one of those annoying kids that used to sort of do drawings and get feedback from adults all the time. But at a certain point, it turned into music. It just sort of immediately and kind of permanently changed to this sort of obsession with music at about the age of 10. I think a lot of it really, the fires were stoked, I suppose, by just living in a really rural area where there was nothing else to do. It's such a sort of geographically dispersed area. All my friends were miles and miles away in the countryside. And so there was nothing left for me to do but sort of sit in my bedroom making music and reading biographies of musicians and writers that I liked. So yeah, it was just always a bit of an obsession really from like the age of 10 or 11, I think.
Nice. So you have an upcoming concept single, and we need to talk about a couple of elements of the production because the number 45 means a lot to this.
Yeah. So well, it started as a bit of a joke, really, a kind of a geeky, like in joke. When I turned 34, I suddenly realized one day that I'd missed the perfect opportunity to release a 33 RPM record when I was 33 or 33 and a third. And ever since then, I've been waiting 12 years to turn 45 so I could correct that massive historical injustice. But no, so that's how it started out. I turned 45 very recently, and I wanted to do a 45 RPM single, but I kind of wanted to do something interesting with the format as well.
Mhm.
A lot of times when people release 7-inch records, it'll have some album track and some dodgy remix on it. There's not often a great deal of thought, I think, that goes into the release. But I wanted to do something that was unique to this, like two tracks that wouldn't be released anywhere else, that were kind of designed to work together in some ways, like from a musical perspective, but also to do something about being the age of 45. I mean, in the world of literature, for example, as we all know, I'm sure, middle age with its sort of infidelities and campus politics or whatever is a very well trodden subject, but
Mhm.
within the music world, and specifically like in the kind of genre that I work in, it's not really a great kind of fodder for songwriting. So I wanted to sort of talk or write some music that was something to do with being the age of 45 as well. And I think kind of what I landed on really was some things that I've taken from various bits of reading I've done over the past 3 or 4 years about various middle-aged queer writers and their sometimes considerable age gap relationships, um, particularly people like, I don't know, Gore Vidal, Tennessee Williams, Allen Ginsberg, people who often went to Morocco, which is kind of where this release is kind of set, as it were, in this sort of search of a more hospitable climate in the 50s, 60s, or 70s. So that was the kind of starting point, really. But yeah, it's really just a kind of a geeky joke between me and my bandmates about releasing a 45 RPM single this year.
Awesome. So, but the two songs tell a story together.
Yeah.
Because and
So
you just briefly mentioned the relationship. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I
that's
wanted to
right.
point out that you mentioned the age gap relationship, and each song is from the perspective of one of the men.
Yeah, exactly. So this is sort of one of the things I suppose I'm trying to do in terms of having the two tracks be in dialogue with each other. That this the sort of musical elements that are shared between the two tracks that probably only people who really maybe know a great deal about music theory would be able to pick up on, maybe some melodic fragments as well. But I wanted each song to kind of reflect each side of an age gap relationship. And so one of the songs is the younger guy addressing um, the lyrics to the older partner, and then the reverse side is the opposite happening as well. And I think one of the things that really inspired me as I was starting to think about this over the last year or so was particularly reading. I don't know if either of you have read it, but there's a wonderful biography of E.M. Forster by Wendy Moffat, which I think came out maybe about 10 years ago or something. And one of the things that, one of the sort of key stories that I really kind of hooked onto in his life was that, admittedly, this was in Alexandria, Egypt, rather than Morocco, but he had a very significant relationship. And one of his first sexual experiences actually was with this guy who was probably about 20 years his junior. Forster was like in his middle 40s or something. But, looked at in a kind of in a certain light, with our modern eyes, that might be seen as somewhat problematic. And yet also, it was a wonderful relationship for both of them. And Forster was very supportive of that guy, even after their sexual connection ended, and sort of financially supported him after he'd moved back to London or whatever. So obviously, of course, as well, I think things have to be modern. I'm not just sort of singing about things that happened in the sort of 20s or 30s or whatever.
Mhm.
And so I started to sort of think about how this would play out in the modern context, and like with app-based culture and things like that. So I suppose some of the lyrics are almost what you sort of imagine would be like a verbatim transcript of the start of the hookup on an app.
Right.
Um, and yeah, end of thought. Run out of steam with that answer.
Well, and so nodding toward the actual music now, the craft behind the what I was hearing, you've blended styles.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried not to indulge too much in pastiche
Hmm.
with this, but I've tried to introduce a few elements that sort of situate the music in a Moroccan context. So I worked with a couple of key musicians on this to give it a bit of sort of Moroccan flavor. There's a percussionist who did some very traditional Moroccan sounding percussion on it. There's also an oud player as well, which on the second track gives it a very kind of Middle Eastern, North African flavor.
Hmm.
And also some of the harmonics, the modes and modalities, and the sort of chord sequences have kind of elements of certain sort of non-Western scales as well. And that's sort of all just sort of shoehorned into a slightly inappropriate genre in some ways, because aside from that, it's your fairly kind of typical shoegaze band, My Bloody Valentine type kind of noisy thing going on with it as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's a bit of an unusual blend, I think, but I'm probably somebody who's normally fairly traditional in adhering to the sort of cliches of my genre. So I was trying to sort of, I won't say push the envelope, but just introduce a slightly different flavor to the whole thing to make it in keeping with the lyrical themes of the release as well. Yeah.
Well, so on those lines, I just want to say I shared the songs with my husband, who loves music but hasn't studied theory, so hasn't gone into the background of anything behind music other than just knowing what he likes and what he loves. And he
Yeah.
was listening to it. He's like, this is like the London rock I used to listen to when I was a young man. He's like, but there's something different. I was like, exactly.
Oh man. Oh, thank you for sharing it. And that's really kind feedback. Yeah, I hope he enjoys it, and
He
I
did,
will
and
send you.
he picked up on something that he picked up on the fact that there were other elements to it. He didn't have names for them, but he heard them.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
kudos
that's
to
great.
you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I will get around to sending you a copy on vinyl when it's fully pressed as well. The artwork and all the stuff has just been sent off to the pressing plant this week, and it's going to be quite
How
unusual.
exciting.
Yeah, I mean, again, sort of trying to make things a bit more special than people normally do with a 7-inch single. It's actually coming with like a booklet that pulls out as well with like an essay and some artwork and some kind of lyric clues and things like that as well. So I'm hoping it's going to look very special as well as hopefully sounding okay as well.
Neat, neat. Baz, did you have questions?
No, I just had a comment in that I think it's wonderful when artists do explore areas of music who that aren't necessarily they're part of their culture, and I like that because I'm while you were talking about this, I immediately went to Corner of the Earth by Jamiroquai, who
Mhm.
often blends, he not only was he doing the
Yeah,
acid jazz stuff of the 90s, but then he did Corner of the Earth where it has a very Middle Eastern feel to it,
yeah,
obviously influenced by the culture and has, this really amazing sound to it. And a lot of people responded to how unique that piece of work was for him.
yeah,
And and I think that it's great when you have like, even the modality and the tones that you have, like in the Lord of the Rings score by Howard Shore, where he used a
Mhm.
lot of those Eastern influences in the music. And to
Yeah,
us, it sounds fresh and new and interesting. But
yeah,
to the other parts of the world where this is normal, I think it also might be a little bit interesting to them because here's somebody playing with those tones and those
yeah, yeah.
scales and that kind of thing. And so, I mean, do you find inspiration from other artists who do this kind of, exploration of
Yeah.
stuff?
It's an interesting question. Um, I think like the interest in world music with me goes back quite a long way. In fact, actually, the kind of music that I'm known for, like this sort of ambient, shoegazy, dream pop, or however you want to define it, was something that I came to comparatively late in my development. I've only really sort of discovered my favorite band, the Cocteau Twins, when I was about 17.
Hmm.
Before that, there was a whole period of like 3 or 4 years where I was listening to a lot of world music, like particularly stuff that was on the Real World label, Peter Gabriel's record company, and musicians from Egypt or Pakistan or different places around the world. And that's quite deep in me, I think. And it's one of those things. It's like any revelation that you have. Like in retrospect, it seems startlingly obvious, but it's only recently that I've started to realize that I can try and shoehorn other things into what I'm doing and it will probably still work. Like I've got the experience as an artist now and the equipment necessary to actually just experiment with things. And if they work, they work. But if they don't work, I don't have to share them. So it's almost like the other way around. Like now, to your point, I suppose what I'm starting to think about is like, well, let's find some other people who are doing things like this and I can see what else has been done kind of in this same format maybe or in my genre.
Yeah,
But yeah,
because I
sort of.
mean, there's like Dimash Kudaibergen, who's
Uh-huh.
Kazakh, and he's
Yeah,
been doing a lot of Western influence stuff, but he also blends it with his Kazakh culture, and so you
yeah,
get this lovely mix and play. And I think that when you
yeah,
have artists who are playing with world culture music, and
yeah,
even the collaborations they may do because of those things, I think that that's really kind of an amazing thing to behold. And I think maybe that's where
yeah.
music is going, that we're going to
I think
start,
so.
you know?
I think that's totally on the ball. I think that's on the mark at that point because people probably shoot me for saying this, but I think a lot of the technological innovations that can be made in music have probably been made at this point. There's new sound treating devices appear on the market every week, but there isn't really that forward momentum that there's been throughout the history of popular music. And I think what people are trying to do and starting to develop an appetite for is finding weird hybrids of things that have gone before, and like increasingly exotic combinations. But I'll have to check that artist out. Maybe we need to like share a Spotify playlist with each other or something. Because that's the other thing with music these days, is that it used to be the case that there would be in any given point quite a number of very well-known bands, but with a sort of siloing of culture generally. I could be speaking with a music fan who I think is completely aligned with me, and their favorite records of last year will be things I've never heard of, because everything is just so siloed. And
Right.
Well,
some people are only
and I
really good
think
on certain blogs. Or sorry, carry on.
no. I think to your point here, that's what we lost when we lost record stores.
Yes, exactly.
One of the things that we loved about going to record stores wasn't so
Yeah,
much in just going to buy the one album you're searching for or whatever. It was the fact that you combed the bins and there were other people in that same genre of music, and
yeah,
you would strike up conversations and
yeah,
discover these things. Now we're just relying on algorithms, which
yeah.
isn't the same thing. It's not the same thing at all.
It's the opposite. It's
Yeah,
making you it's getting you deeper into what you're into already, rather than broadening your taste.
right.
But yeah, exactly. It's so funny. I was doing another interview this morning, and one of the questions was like, who are some of the more influential people in your life that aren't your parents or partners or whatever? And I realized that actually probably one of the most influential people in my entire life was the guy who ran the record store in my local town when I
Mm-hmm.
was about 14 or 15.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would get into conversations with that guy. He was always on his own, smoking in his shop, playing records. And he would love to sort of chat. And he would, it was a secondhand store. So he would kind of sometimes try and shape my taste and maybe even buy things in for me. And I think you'll appreciate this. Just pay me next week if you like it. And that kind of relationship opens so many doors for
Yeah,
you.
it does.
Um,
And because you're talking to people who have the same passion. Oh, there goes my cat. That have the same passions that you do, but maybe
yeah,
have exposure to things that you've never run across. And I think that that's what I think the kids have lost their way. And this is going to sound like
yeah.
here I am, the old Gen Xer screaming about the music out there. But yeah, to my point though, I think that and a lot of the kids now have reaction channels reacting to music from the older generations. They're discovering people who really did hone their craft. They didn't just copy and paste beats and they
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
copy and paste motifs and repeat them ad nauseum and then try to do some kind of song over it. There are very few. You don't have bands like you used to have. You know what I mean? We don't have that kind of musical influence anymore. And I think it's been because of social media and the algorithms that they apply these things, especially in the music arena. And you kind of, like you say, you fall into like a certain part of whatever you like, and then it's all amalgamated into these core group of people who produce that, and you don't get
yeah,
the exposure of people who play with it that you may never hear from. And I think, if anything, children, we really wish, and records are making a comeback. They are literally
yeah,
making a comeback. And we need to have record stores again. And it would even be great if they used to bring back what was back in the 30s and 40s, where they had listening rooms,
absolutely. Yeah,
where you could sit in there with somebody else and
yeah,
have a great conversation about the music. And I think that that's something that people miss, and we just don't realize how magical it was.
yeah. It's really sad, isn't it? Like, I think it's part and parcel of just the kind of general death of music. This sounds very dramatic, but there was a time when popular music was the dominant world art form, and I think it's probably an unarguable point at this stage that it is no longer that. I don't know what the dominant art form is these days, but it's certainly not like popular music. And
Yeah.
so some weird things happen, right, as a result. That firstly, anybody with a Spotify account can pretty much access the whole entire history of recorded music at a superficial level without engaging with it very much.
And
But
from
then I
those
suppose,
artists who haven't pulled their music from there
well,
for not
exactly,
getting
yeah,
paid, I mean,
yeah,
or getting
yeah,
paid a
yeah,
pittance, And then that's also to the detriment of music industry is that you
yeah,
have these platforms that literally are starving the artists who create the work that goes on that platform. And
yeah,
it's really, really hard to find that. I mean, it's to a point now, I think, where we almost have to burn the current system down and rebuild it again and have some flavor of what we had in the past that actually worked.
yeah,
Going to Tower Records with seeing all the artists who recreated those album covers in huge portraits that would hang in the stores, that just the level of craft that would go into those stores sometimes, or those record stores that had found bootlegs of stuff that you never even knew existed. We had a record store here called Blue Meanie, and those buyers used to go to Britain and Europe and buy all
yeah,
kinds of bootleg stuff. They'd go to Russia and find all the stuff that was on the black market, and they'd bring it back. And the conversations people would have while
yeah,
that music was played in those little stores was
yeah,
magical. I mean, it's just hard for kids nowadays to understand how magical it was. And it's
yeah.
really sad that we've lost so much of that.
Totally. I mean, I sort of consider myself lucky, I suppose, to live in London, a major population center. There are record stores here. They do, I think they're relatively thoughtful about, the work that they do, even the very big ones like Rough Trade and places like that. But still, as you say, there's no getting around the fact that it's not like it's on every street corner.
Right.
And it's very much like a commercial transaction. I don't know the guy behind the counter, and he's not going to recommend or she recommend things to
Right.
me.
Right.
So yeah, it's very, very sad. But then I suppose, just to play devil's advocate here, the flip side, I suppose, is that it's all online now, and there are artists who are able to make like a reasonable career with just a very geographically dispersed audience, a pocket in Japan, a pocket in the States, a pocket in the United Kingdom. It's there is a chance there for a viable career, but it just it never does what music used to do back in the day when there were bottlenecks, which is rise to the level of kind of public consciousness. It's all
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
cult audiences and things like that,
Mm.
of which I'm a beneficiary, I think. But yeah, not going to be filling the Albert Hall anytime soon with my audience. Put it that way.
So, is there anything about either single or the concept LP as a whole that you want audiences to know that we haven't thought to ask?
Oh, blimey, there's a question. Um, no, I don't think so. I think we've talked about it in the sufficient level of detail. I just would invite people, even people who don't have sort of a vinyl record player or whatever, to just investigate the release on
Hmm.
various platforms. The first track will be available as a single on Spotify and the various places that we've just been slagging off from the day that this podcast goes live. The full release will be on March 27. You'll be able to listen to it, stream it for nothing, and just grateful for any listeners, really, even those that don't invest in vinyl. But of course, saying all of that, it's a lovely package, and you should absolutely buy one of
There
the
you go.
highly limited
You
There you go.
100
absolutely
vinyl
should.
copies.
And coming from someone who was a DJ in the late 70s through the 80s and into the 90s, and I have well over 6,000 albums and 12 inches. And yeah, I have boxes and boxes and boxes of those plastic bin crates I used to have to haul around to gigs and stuff that I used to play. believe me, I value people who still do vinyl. I really do, because there was nothing like it. I mean, where else can you buy an album and after overplaying it, it just sounds like there's a raging fireplace next to you because of all the little scratches
Yeah,
and kinks. You know, the kids are missing out on that too. Oh, look,
yeah.
it's Shaka Khan with the fire then by the
Well, I shall look forward to making it 6001 copies soon. I'll send
Right.
one over to you.
Love that. Love that.
Beautiful. Are you ready to take a crack at this year's Get to Know You questions?
Oh, okay. Yes, fine. The quick fire ones.
Okay.
Yes, let's
All
do
right.
it.
Well, I've modified it a bit because you're a musician, so we'll go with what I have here. All right. What book, film, or piece of work, art, if you want to say it that, has had the biggest influence on your style?
Oh, it's going to be two things. Sorry to overcomplicate. Musically, it would be the Cocteau Twins' final album, Milk and Kisses. That is the the, the band and the album that sort of kick-started my love for this kind of music that I make now. Second thing, though, and this is sort of, I suppose, more on the lyrical side, would be the influence of the dearly departed last year gay writer Edmund White, who has
Mm-hmm.
been a profound influence on me, particularly his much underrated but beautiful novel, The Farewell Symphony. I don't know if either of you have read that one. It's everyone knows A Boy's Own Story, the one that
Yeah.
kickstarts the trilogy, but the final one, the AIDS one, is devastatingly good. I think it's probably the only book I've read 10 or 12 times, I think.
Love that. Okay. What fictional or historical character would you invite to march with you at a pride parade?
Oh, would a TV character count?
Oh,
I think
sure.
it
If
probably
that's
would,
fictional.
right? Patsy Stone from Absolutely
Oh, well, there
Fabulous.
you go.
You
Come
just
on.
know that she's game and
Come
that she's
on.
going to be the biggest fag hag, right? So
If you could get her to stay straight when you walk.
she'd probably drink me under the pride float as well, I should think.
I can see Patsy on an electric scooter with her stolen
Yeah.
Probably the closest she'd get to marching. Okay. If you or your protagonist had to survive a gay bar karaoke night, what song would you or they belt out?
Oh, blimey. I've never done this, but I've always wanted to. I wanted to do Love Shack with like one of my best female friends.
There you
I think
go.
we, I think we could do justice to Love Shack. It's not obviously not in my normal style, but I think we could do it quite well, and hopefully with the aim of being carried shoulder high from the building
Well,
afterwards.
yeah,
With
there you go.
cheerleaders.
There you go. There you go. I love that. Okay. What's a place, real or imagined, that feels like home to you and why?
Oh, this is going to sound like quite a basic answer, I think, but I'd have to say New York City. Um, as somebody who grew up in like the most rural area of the UK, or one of the most rural areas, there's part of me that was always desperate to get out to a city, and sort of like stepping stones, gone from Manchester to London, and then kind of finally visited New York City probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 times in the last decade. I absolutely adore it. And anything you can say about New York City is going to be an immediate cliche. The fact that it feels like you're living in a film. And I know it's sanitized. I know it's not what it used to be. But, there was a time like with me and my artistic interests where a lot of the key artists in my life, whether it be writers like Edmund White, poets like Frank O'Hara, musicians like Patti Smith, or the no wave scene, was just all in New York City at the same time in the
Yep.
1970s
Hell's
with all these
Kitchen,
different,
Greenwich Village. Yeah.
yeah, CBGBs and Talking
Uh-huh.
Heads, like
Yep.
all of these things completely unconnected, but just in the same kind of boiling
Melting pot of, yeah,
firmament of
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, melting pot. Um, I think it's that sort of interest in New York in the 60s and 70s has kind of become a bit of a cliche in itself, hasn't it? But it's definitely one that I've got. I'm very interested in that period. So yeah, I'd have to say New York.
Okay, excellent. I love that. I love that. Okay, what's the strangest or most unexpected place you've ever found inspiration for a work of yours?
Tempted to say something funny but untrue, like a sex dungeon, but I actually don't have any stories like that. Um,
Let's
um,
pretend.
revealing the sources of the things I write about.
Yeah.
No, actually, a slightly kind of basic answer, but one that is true, is somebody who just, as I said before, was kind of desperate to get away from the southwest of England when I was growing up. The strangest and most surprising place that I found inspiration over the last decade or so, whilst I've sort of simultaneously been visiting New York City, is to rediscover the part of the country where I grew up, and not exactly where I grew up, but it's in the same area, and visiting that place every year, spending several months there over the last decade, and getting to know the sort of country version of myself, the non-city version. It was a big part of the thought that went into the last album that we spoke about last time, the sort of rural
Hmm.
and city divide, and what that meant in terms of Brexit Britain. But it's been, I suppose, a surprise and an inspiration to me to find over the last decade or so that actually I don't entirely hate where I come from.
Did you ever have the feeling you were the only gay in the village?
I was definitely the
You were
only gay in the
David?
village. I was David, and yeah. Well, I was the only gay in the village until another person came out, and then we had a relationship. So that was what
Well,
it was
oh,
like
there you go.
being gay in the sticks.
All right. Well, which themes or motifs do you find yourself returning to again and again in your works?
Yeah, it's again, it's probably going to sound like a fairly obvious thing to say, but it's just sort of love and desire in its various forms, and the fact that I don't know, my most successful songs, the lyrics that hit hardest for me when we're either recording or playing them live, are the ones that are sort of taking elements of my past, people I've known, guys that I've been with, things like that, and viewing it through the lens of compassion. So I'm thinking of two or three of my favorite songs at the moment that we do in the live repertoire that are basically all about messages of support for ex-partners when they've been having difficult times. And I find this kind of mixture, this is one of those new thoughts, so I'm probably not explaining this very well, but this sort of merging of themes of compassion for people that once meant a great deal to you, even if they are no longer part of your life, but also the kind of memory of that intoxicating desire and what it was like to know them back then. Those two threads, when they're combined, seem very powerful to me. And I think it's something that's at the core of some of my best songs, I think.
Excellent. Love that. Well, finally, what's a piece of LGBTQ culture, music, film, art, history that never fails to inspire you?
I'm going to name a sort of a period rather than a specific piece, but I cannot get enough of reading memoirs or histories or novels about the AIDS crisis. I think younger gay people in general are probably not fully conscious of what happened in the 80s and 90s, but it strikes me that it's one time in our history of queer people, where people were absolutely at their best, when faced with basically a holocaust and nobody knowing who was going to be the next
And
person to
nobody
go,
caring to
and
really
nobody
help us.
caring.
Yeah.
You had like Reagan wouldn't even say the word AIDS in public
Hmm.
for 7 years. It wasn't that much better in the UK either. The way gay people pulled together and looked after each other and cared for each other, literally, as well as emotionally. Um, and I think it's sort of like our Second World War moment, really, where it really showed the levels of compassion that queer people um, I think uniquely able to employ when they need to.
Absolutely. Well, you made it through our list. Bravo.
Bravo. Nicely done. So, LP's coming out soon. What else are you working on?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned at the top, this year I'm going into the third draft of my memoir, which is basically about being the only gay in the village, but also about some of
And the new
the
title
good
is Here's Looking at You, David.
David's story. Yeah. um, but that hopefully that's going to be a fairly light task. I've done a lot of work on this on the first and second draft, so it's really just try and edit in, cut out some of the flim flam, I think. So that's a big thing that I'm doing this year. God knows if anybody will ever want to publish it. I hope I don't have to go down the self-publish route, but as I kind of self-publish most of my records, I'm quite happy to do that if necessary. The other thing is I'm probably about a week away from finishing work on the next actual album, which is a big piece that I've been working on for probably about 4 years now, long before the previous album came out. And for the first time in my career, every single song on this double album, and there's 20 songs on it, are about different aspects or angles of queer experience. There's songs about Stonewall, there's songs about the AIDS crisis, there's songs about all different kinds of things, including, Fire Island and Walt Whitman and Virginia Woolf and other queer artists and writers. So I'm sure, like all of my records, it will zoom up the charts and make me a multi-millionaire.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But no, that should hopefully be out, I should imagine, towards the end of this year. I'm very excited about that.
Love that.
Excellent. Well, where is the best place for people to keep up with your news, follow the release dates for all these projects? Is it your
Yeah,
website? Is it a social site?
yeah, website danielland.co.uk rather than .com. Somebody got to the .com before I could, unfortunately.
Oh no.
There's also the various
Who's that
socials, like
imposter?
exactly. It's not exactly a very common name, is
I
it?
know.
Quite surprised, but there we go. Most socials, I'm / Daniel Land Music. That would be Instagram, Facebook, YouTube is a good place as well, / Daniel Land for that one. But if you actually want to listen and support the release, then go to danielland.bandcamp.com and the release will be up there from Friday the 9th.
Perfect. Well, Daniel, do you have any final words of wisdom?
I don't know about wisdom, but just thank you so much again for taking the opportunity to speak to me. Like, I appreciate you guys. I love the pod. And thanks for all that you do to support artists outside the mainstream.
Well, thank you for being an artist both outside and inside the mainstream, but more specifically for having your voice out there, especially for those who still need to hear it and aren't at a point in their lives where they can be open yet.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Yep. And especially for those people who are those of us in our community that are in oppressed countries who
Right.
may happen upon your works and it be the guiding light that they really need. So, there's always that part.
Derek Jarman was final thought. Derek Jarman once had to coax a straight boy into doing a gay kiss on the screen in the film that he was making. And the guy agreed to do it when he said that if just one kiss on the screen can liberate or set free some poor closeted boy's heart, watching in some rural area, then it's worth doing. So yeah, that's a nice idea.
There you go. There you go.
All right, listeners, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Daniel Land for being with us today. Daniel, thank you, and thank you for your flexibility. We really appreciate it.
Problems? No, it's good to talk to you.
We at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. If you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Our show is produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye-bye now.
What's that? Closing time. Bum's Rush and Melody, dear.